closet, also known as the Jim McCarthy Voiceovers World Headquarters Studio. This is the JMVO Weekly Primer. Please subscribe, rate, and comment via jimmccarthyvoiceovers.com/podcast. This is episode 41. Hard to believe, 41 episodes in of the JMVO Weekly Primer. This is the podcast about making your life better through marinating your mind in good stuff. My name is Jim McCarthy, owner, operator, and chief bottle washer at jimmccarthyvoiceovers.com. I believe that as business owners, entrepreneurs, and overall salespeople, we are bombarded by negativity every single day. And it's a choice we get to make, whether or not we engage in it or brush it away and dodge it. It's the last thing we need ultimately. If you want to see your life and business change for the better, consume nurturing good stuff. That includes the people you surround yourself with, which actually today's guest is going to talk a lot about. But of course, first and foremost, you can always subscribe to this podcast, rate, comment, and like at jimmccarthyvoiceovers.com/podcast. Pick your poison, however you want to listen to the podcast for iPhone and Android. I'm on iTunes, I'm on Stitcher, I'm on Blueberry. I believe I got the confirmation from Spotify, and I'm on a few other different things. But by all means, if you want to listen to it on your own platform, whatever that may be, let me know what it is, and we'll see about getting it on there for sure. Of course, the podcast is always sponsored by Big Dot Lighting. Go figure. Those guys are just great. Commercial LED lighting conversion specialists. We convert all sorts of commercial facilities to energy-efficient LED lighting. If you go to the Facebook page or even our YouTube channel, you'll be able to see the latest project we finished, a big one, a big feather in our cap, Trevecca Nazarene University here in Nashville, Tennessee. 13-month payoff. We got them the financing, all the stuff that they needed, did the whole project over a summer and took care of them. A very big project, and it turned out just fabulous. LAMP, Lighting and Maintenance Partnership, is big for businesses that are very open-minded. They know they want to get going on LEDs. That's an operational expense way to do it. Check it out at bigdotlighting.com, BIGDOT lighting.com. On with the show. So, several years ago, as you all well know, I was in radio. And part of my job included getting guests into the studio, whether they were clients or clients of clients, to record spots and do 30-second spots, 60-second spots. And my technique at the time, whenever I had a client come in to do a radio commercial, was they would have the copy in front of them. They would read their script. And as soon as I knew they were warmed up and their mouth was limber and stuff, I would take the script out of their hands and we'd just start a conversation. Unbeknownst to them, the mic would be right next to their mouth and I'd make sure I'd be getting a good level. And I would probably get in about a 20-minute conversation, probably 4 to 6 different spots, radio spots out of that conversation. It was very natural. It was from the heart, off the top of their head. We had a certain client that came in and brought some of his clients with him that wanted to speak very goodly about him. And my next guest was one of them. And she came into the studio and she was just this force of ownership. She just took charge of her life and knew exactly what she wanted. She made her name in creating events and weddings here around Nashville. But since then, and we've run into each other in other areas of life. When I was in the car business, I almost sold her a car, almost got to the finish line, but we just didn't have the right car. I'm sure she would have bought from me if I had the right car, but that, I don't hold that against her. It's fine. We're still friends to this day. And here we are. So she exploded her business, became like internationally known. And the last time I ran into her, she was off doing other things, what I call spinning plates. And the reason why I'm having her on is because she does that today. She does a lot of different things. And a lot of people look at me and what I do and they say, okay, over here, you're doing voiceover, video, podcast production, but over here, you're doing this LED thing. What is that all about? Do you work for them? And I'm like, no, I own the company. I own half of it with a great business partner, Tim Cooper. We're putting a fabulous team together and we're serving our clients. It's just something that I always felt there was potential there. And as an entrepreneurial mindset, I felt like I had to pursue that at the time. And she is kind of the same way. And it's fun because we just did her podcast. And I had a different direction I wanted to take with this particular episode, but all of a sudden I'm like, no, this is the direction we need to take. Addressing multifaceted entrepreneurial mindset. Like when people say, okay, what do I do? Try the things that make the most sense. So with that being said, I'm going to bring her on. Ms. Angela Proffitt. It is Ms. I'm making sure that it is a Ms., correct?
I'm not married. I don't like long-term commitments. No.
It just kind of popped out. I'm like,
just Miss M-I-S-S.
M-I-S-S. Let's go with that. Angela Proffitt and I have been, I think, pretty, well, we've known of each other since that time in radio. Then we got, we came back around in the car business when I was working for Mercedes. And at that time, you had said something that really stuck out to me because, the first time I met you, I was like, wow, you're really aspiring to some pretty significant heights here. And I looked at it almost with envy because I'm going, man, I know I just don't have the balls to do it. I did that. And that's just how it was back then for me. And then I meet you again, and I believe it was on the test drive. We took out an ML, and you had said that you wanted to go and own an island. I'm going, oh my gosh.
I did.
I just want to sell a bunch of cars, man. I'm thinking too small.
Think big or go home.
You got it, but a lot of the things we talked about in your podcast just now, let's start from the beginning, because you had mentioned that you are the daughter of a police officer. Is that correct?
So my dad he worked for CSX, which was a train company, but he was an undercover drug agent for CSX. So started out in law enforcement. He was a fireman. I wasn't even born yet, but pretty much the whole time that I've been born since he passed, he worked for the same company and retired there. And that's kind of what I grew up around. Yeah.
And how did all this, when did you start realizing you wanted some pretty big things? What was the catalyst for that?
So I, of course, got great work ethic, but had, much like you had a really great childhood, great parents. I did too. My mom stayed at home, raised 3 kids. I'm the oldest. And my dad worked and he traveled and he supported our family. But the important thing growing up, they kept all of us kids in a lot of different activities. So I was the girl that was a gymnast. I twirled the baton. I was in pageants. I was in Girl Scouts. They forced me to play basketball, and I'm like 4'11", barely 5 foot for church. But that was a strategy. Apparently, as an adult now, I know that my parents had to keep us busy and to teach us good work ethic. And so they never really had to tell me, make your bed, go get a job. When I was 13, I was teaching gymnastics because I was always at the gym training. So I learned a lot of discipline, not only from being a gymnast, but also my parents and just seeing my dad work hard. But it's a very different type of work hard because I didn't know what an entrepreneur was, because it definitely wasn't my family. They're very type A. You do the same thing every day. My dad still had variety because he traveled with his job, but it was the security of having insurance and benefits and a 401k, whatever the hell, whatever that is. But it just, I still can't even really spell entrepreneur because I'm the spell check generation. So I didn't even really know what that was until I started to do different things and then surrounding myself with the right people. And I started to lose kind of friendships and started to find new friends and people that were on the same, they thought the way I thought. And I really found out kind of who I was when I was about 30, I would say. And it's okay, I'm going to give up this career thing that I was kind of brainwashed that this is what you should do. And then when I joined this group, a Catalyst group, and I felt like I was getting an MBA, best thing I ever did, because they asked me the first day, why are you doing this? What's your end goal? And I'm like, what do you mean? I really, no one had ever asked me that or challenged me. And I'm like, I just learned what a private island was. I'd never been. I didn't even know they existed. I had a client. It's a long story, but I was doing her wedding. We were doing a TLC show around it, and then they just canceled everything. And she's like, find us a private island where nobody knows who I am. And I just want it to be us to get away. And the next thing I know, 28 days later, I'm on a tiny little plane taking motion sick medicine, praying I don't puke in people's laps, because there were like 5 of us on the plane. And I landed on a private island, and I met the owner, and well, actually his partner, because he was in jail for tax evasion. He's out now. And here we are almost 9 years later, and I still have a great relationship with that island. I do consulting for them, but that opened my eyes up to a way bigger world that I was never exposed to. And so in the beginning of my career in working with private islands, I'm like, I want to own a private island. But then after working with them for several years, I'm like, I don't need to own an island anymore. I just want to help them be profitable and understand people and make people happy. So yeah, that dream's kind of gone.
How did the wedding and the event planning start, though? I mean, did you have a natural attraction to it?
So my family actually owned a venue. My Uncle Charles, he had a venue in Mississippi on the Gulf Coast. And so, we would go to the beach, which the water's like brown, like it's like nasty. I would never step foot in it now. This is pre-casino days around Biloxi, Mississippi. And so I kind of grew up around it. And he started off, just doing flowers, and then doing dresses, and then started making cakes, and then grew into a catering kitchen. It ended up being like a one-stop shop. But I also saw how he literally was married to his business. And I'm like, I will never do that. But I knew how to decorate. I knew how to make things pretty. My sister did as well, who's 5 years younger than me. And I just did it for fun. Like when I got to the age of where my parents' friends' kids started to get married in the Catholic Church, my parents were head of the funeral committee. And so they took care of the people dying. We took care of the people getting married. I did it for fun for like 2 years, just at the Catholic Church. And then other people word of mouth, because social media did not exist back then. They're like, so I'm not Catholic and I'm not getting married at St. Stephen's, but can you come here? And can you come here? And so that led into, well, Angela, you should get a business license and insurance, because if you're going to start helping people with their money, you need to cover your butt. I had no clue anything about business, what the hell I was doing. I didn't understand, but I knew 2 things. I knew that I loved it, and I knew that it made people happy. And then I knew from being in healthcare that being paperless was very powerful, from helping the medical industry change from paper charts to EMR, electronic medical records. And so I started everything paperless, which kind of is a whole nother business, but there was a lot to be said in that. And then this business was born, and it just kind of took off by working hard pre-social media.
And you just kind of executed on something you were having fun with.
Seriously.
Something I preach all the time.
Yeah, I mean, and it wasn't like a real job. Like, it definitely was a hobby, a fun side hustle. There was always extra money. I mean, I liked my job in healthcare. I did a lot of things and moved up, and ended up doing a lot of recruiting for subspecialists. I like being in the know in the medical industry. And I was fascinated by the technology. But when an opportunity presented itself for me to go film a show with Kelly Pickler and her husband-to-be, which then got canceled and then took us to a private island, it was like, I can always go back to healthcare and fall back on something. Like, your parents taught you the same thing. And the doctor I worked for at the time, he's like, did you fall and hit your head? Like, are you on drugs? Like, you're a house producer. What's your problem? Do we need to pay you more money? I'm like, no, I'm going to jump. And honestly, I didn't even think about it for 24 hours. She called, and I was doing an Indian wedding at the Corvette Museum for 800 Indians. And she called on a Saturday night, and I answer the phone, of course, because I'm in the middle of doing a wedding. I'm in the bathroom because a drunk person ripped the toilet paper thing off the drywall. And that's what I was dealing with when this all went down. And she's like, so I just wanted to follow up and let you know that we're going to go a different direction, but I wouldn't want anyone else to go with us other than you. So it was like really fun. We became fast friends, and we started filming the show. And I couldn't tell anybody because it's like there's these confidentiality things, and like I took it like to the extreme. Like I would not tell anybody what I was doing. My parents are like, "Are you okay?" Like, I think my dad literally thought I was on drugs. I'm like, I'm going to take a chance. I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to jump and try this company thing. And if it doesn't work out, I'll go back to healthcare. That was like 10 years ago.
Wow.
So never looked back. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's really incredible. And it's something that you were addressing that, when that high profile client came into your life, was that the first one or were there others before that?
So I had worked with a couple other country music artists just by nature from being in Nashville. They definitely were not on. So Kelly, how she became known in the public eye is through American Idol, and her humbling story of literally coming from nothing. Her grandmother raised her, a really hard family life, which she very publicly talks about. And so, I had worked with some other country music people, nobody that had ever like been on TV. And like honestly, we didn't grow up with TV. My dad like sheltered us from that. So like, I don't know normal things because like we didn't have TV and didn't watch TV. We were like library children. Like my parents, we had a library card. So again, strategy with good mom and dad. But I didn't know who she was. In fact, to this day, like we work with people in the public eye, I don't know who they are. And it's, sometimes very embarrassing where I tell my team, I'm like, hey, like we did something with this guy, Joe Biden, and I didn't know who that was. I literally did not. I was pulling, this was a few years ago. It was our groom. And his father, the groom's father, Joe Biden, was his brother. So it was his uncle. And I pull up and I'm like unloading this big ass van with refrigerated, flowers. And I'm like, why are all these hot dudes and dogs around here? And I'm like, what's the problem? And they're like, are you on the list? And I'm like, what list? Get out of my way. Like, I'm really behind. And we had rented out this whole place in Lake Placid in the middle of nowhere. I already knew we weren't going to have phone service. So we all had radios in our headsets so we could work efficiently. And these people were kind of like high profile. Like the dog was, I think, the highest profile in the wedding party. It was a Land's End model. Like the dog was in a magazine. The guy was like in a rock band. She was a Victoria's Secret model part-time. And so, but when I pull up, they're like, well, Mr. Biden's about to be here. And I'm like, who's that? Like, get out of my way. And they're like, Joe Biden. And he was vice president. This was like second year in office. And so the kid, literally the high school little boy that was sent with me to help me unload the truck, he's like, Joe Biden? He's the vice president of the United States. I'm like, oh, well, no one told me that. Why is he here? And they're like, it's your groom's uncle. I'm like, oh, well, I just did the design. So I'm here to set up the design. I need you to move. Like it was just a lot going on in my head. And so then I get back to the shop in New York and I'm like, why the F didn't you guys tell me that? Like, they're like, but Angela, you work with people in the public eye. Like, it's not a big deal. I'm like, the reason it's a big deal is A, they put a scrambler out. My phone didn't work. And B, my radios didn't work. And C, like, I just need to be prepared for people on the guest list. So now, like, these things still happen to me. And they're like, so-and-so is staying at the Hermitage. Da, da, da. I'm like, who's that? And they're like, the guy who's Superman, like in all the movies. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, from a security standpoint, it's a whole different ballgame. It's actually a lot more work than people are like, oh my God, that's so cool. I'm like, oh my God, no, it's like, you can't talk to anybody and you can't say anything because you don't know if you're talking to like a crazy person or somebody who's like a crazy fan. I mean that, with all due respect, but there are some people out there where it's like, you just have to protect what's happening. And that's hard sometimes. So, so she was the first, that was a long answer. She was the first, I guess, person that had been on TV that a lot of people, but again, like I didn't really know that. In fact, they got married the very same day that Shania Twain got married. And so all these magazines came out and my mom and my brother and my sister texted me and they're like, we know where you are. You're with Shania Twain. I'm like, no, I'm not. And then later, like it came out because I wouldn't tell anybody where I was going. And, $5 million is a lot of money to be sued for. So I was really good at keeping things confidential, and my family respected that because my dad raised us that way. Everything he did in his line of work was highly confidential, a lot of drug stuff, a lot of under the table, like stuff that I didn't understand as a kid. But now as an adult, I understand it. And the cool thing now, well, not cool, but my brother followed in his footsteps. And actually today, earlier, right before I talked with you, we did a little Facebook Live on his business page, and his book came in today. He actually wrote a book about the largest cocaine bust in Nashville's history. He was the lead on it with the wiretap, and it all went down. And then the drug task force got eliminated somehow. Let's see. He's like, one word, politics. And so he started his own company and wrote a book, and is somewhat not outing people, but just letting the public know that what you read and see on TV, not everything is true. Not everything you read on the internet's true, like shocker. Just to educate the public a little bit about the opioid crisis, the cocaine, the politics, things like that. So we're all a very close-knit family, and my dad's not here to see it, but I think that he would be very proud that both of his kids are entrepreneurs. They're following their dreams. And, it's cool to be able to just keep going. It's not always easy being an entrepreneur. There definitely are pros and cons. But like you said, you get to pick and choose what you do every day, and making good decisions and helping people, I feel like is at the heart of it. And that's why we're driven every single day.
Yeah. And it's funny, you hit on two things there. A lot of what I preach, with the basis of the podcast being marinating your mind in good stuff. I used to be immersed in politics constantly, get into these Facebook arguments that went nowhere, changed nobody's minds. And I just had this conversation with a friend of mine yesterday, who was asking me a few things, and we have a great friendship. He thinks differently politically than I do, and I've always known that, but it doesn't come in the way, but I told him, I said, what's the point, of having these conversations? All it's going to do is cause divisiveness. It could plant some seeds, but probably not. But anyway, you took it to the extreme. You just kind of drove it completely, not knowing who the vice president was. I mean, that's focus on what you're doing, man. I could appreciate
very
that
focused,
and that's to be admired. I mean, anything that takes you down that path of negativity, just get it out of your way. If it's the people who get admired in that kind of stuff, I ask them, what do you get out of this? I'm genuinely curious, because I know what I got out of it. I felt like pridefully smarter, and that was very fleeting. And it didn't really work out. I didn't make any more money. My life wasn't any better. I was more frustrated. I pissed people off. What do you get out of it? And they said, well, I just feel like I'm causing change. Or do you really feel like you're causing change? Because all you're doing is causing, you're making the other person feel like an idiot. And that's, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. It's, I just kind of don't marinate my mind in that kind of stuff. But you're very entrepreneurial. Your brother's very entrepreneurial, like what you were talking about. And what is it that he does again? You brought it up.
Yeah. So, well, now, with a lot of, again, surrounding yourself with the right people and the right cheerleaders. He owns a PI company. So it's a private investigations company, and does security. So he does a lot of security for my events, and his company is trained, again, all on psychology. And that's just, me in the back of his ear. Right. Hey, this has worked really well for me over the last almost 20 years of having a business license. So try this. But I know that, every day he's like, thanks, Ange. I wouldn't be where I am without you. And, thanks for being my cheerleader. And, he's just a year into being an entrepreneur, because for 10 years he worked for the drug task force and was kind of told what to do. And then I think he started to see the politics, and he's like, screw this. I'm a good person. I'm going to put my head down on my pillow at night and feel good about it. And, our parents raised us with morals and values and ethics, and you're nice to everyone, and you treat everyone with respect, no matter who they are or what they're doing. I have a very saintly mother, they're all God's children, Angela, even people who do bad things, they pray for forgiveness. I mean, that's my mom. She lives in denial sometimes. I'm like, that's sweet, Mom, but no, we're not doing that. I was that way for like a tad bit. And then I'm like, reality set in. So I know this is loud, and I'm sorry. I have to go get my computer charger. Otherwise, this is going to I have 4% on my computer. So can I run down?
You
Let me go get my computer charger, and I will be right back.
I'll do a little bit of monologuing until you come back. And what Angela's talking about a lot is the aspect of entrepreneurship where you have the desire to get out on your own and the freedom of it but it still doesn't excuse you from performing. You still all of a sudden become your own salesperson. And that's very important. It's something that I talk about a lot. You need to start understanding the actual sales process and understanding that without sales, there is no business. Getting out there, making sure you're discovering the new money to feed your business and feed your entrepreneurial dreams. If you listen to Vaynerchuk, he talks about, if you've got a main job and you want to eventually make your side hustle, your full-time hustle, doing the 7 p.m. to 2 a.m. grind, if you will, to make that side hustle and realize it into your actual dream full-time hustle. Okay. It's very important. And understanding ahead of time, this is something that Angela and I talked about on the podcast when we were doing hers before this one, the 5 years it could take to launch an idea and get a business off the ground. You gotta give yourself about that timeline. It could take 10 years. But 5 to 10 years, you got to understand the next 5 to 10 years, you need to enjoy what you're doing. You need to understand and enjoy that every day you get up, it's going to be a grind. It's going to be ups and downs. You're going to have, the peaks and valleys. You need to figure out how to weather those valleys. What's going to get you out? What's going to get you into the right mindset of getting back to the peak and thinking positively? Yeah, like we talked about before, engaging in politics, negative think, pointless Facebook discussions like I used to do never got me anywhere until I went out on my own in 2016. And I came home and told my wife I was done working for other people. I started listening to stuff that fed me, podcasts. I gleaned a lot from Cardone and Vaynerchuk. That's no secret. But also audiobooks. Go out for a walk. When you have a string of phone calls that you make during that time that you allot to go out and find new money as an entrepreneur, what's going to lift you out of that funk? Okay. Taking a walk around the neighborhood, something I learned in the car business. I went through a 2-week dry spell of not selling a thing. And literally the GM of the dealership, who was a great friend of mine, he said, dude, go out and take a walk around the dealership, get yourself an ice cream cone and, figure out how it literally happened and figure out how to break the funk, for some of us, for Angela, it seemed on the surface, we're seeing like what people see the top of the iceberg and what's below the waterline. They don't see the struggle, the days you didn't feel like getting up, the days that, you didn't feel like working out. You just didn't feel like making phone, all that stuff. People don't think about because entrepreneurship right now is very sexy. It's the thing to do. Everybody wants to be their own person. And this is actually a good transition. Everybody wants to be a coach. We have 22-year-old and 23-year-old life coaches out there that haven't.
WTF.
Right. Pardon my French. They haven't shit their first diaper. Okay. When it comes to business. And this kind of gets into it. You and I are kind of wired similarly. That's funny. That's a word that I find hard to say. Similarly and regularly are tough words for me to say as a voiceover person. Isn't that funny? And it's funny and this is a total freaking squirrel moment right now. I have this cork sitting here in front of me, and people go, "What is the cork for?" Whenever I get a script that has the word regularly, which drives me nuts. Because it's such an unnatural word to say. I stick the cork in my mouth. I go, regularly. You're taking over.
Oh my gosh. Right
now. Regularly.
Does that help?
It does. You get the muscle memory down. But
I can't say, there's a couple words. I can't say. Yeah, total ADD. I can't say conscience. Like, let's be, I don't know. Anyway. Yeah, I can't
conscious.
say it.
Conscientious.
Yeah, I can't
Conscientious.
Conscientious. Yeah, I can't say that word. I don't know what it is.
So you
Sorry
and I, getting back to the similarly word, we're kind of wired the same way. I always knew I was a creature of change, and a lot of the same thing did not satisfy me over time. Like when I started doing video production, it was fun, it was fulfilling, it was new, it was exciting. Now it's just kind of a grind. It's a little bit of a bane, but I do it. I'm good at it. I don't like the editing process. I prefer shooting a lot better. I really still enjoy voiceover because to me it's efficient, it's quick. I can turn $1 very quickly that way. And I guess that maybe doesn't sound very good, but that's the truth. Your wedding and consulting business obviously exploded. I can't imagine, were there a lot of peaks and valleys with doing that, or was just all upside seemingly?
Well, honestly, with social media not existing when I got started and things when they really took off, a couple of things that, I didn't know what I didn't know. And it wasn't cool to there weren't business coaches and I wasn't being targeted, and all this stuff, which is so different now. It's such a joke sometimes. But anyway,
it is.
I worked my ass off and I said yes, literally to everything. Because I never knew, my first 2 years, it was never about money. I had plenty of money saved. I didn't even balance a checkbook back then. I didn't have an accountant. I had a big, nice house. My parents built a house behind me. There was plenty. And, but money comes and goes and it's a tool. And I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I didn't have kids or anything. I'm I'll just build a production facility and get a car, whatever. But, things come and go. And what I didn't understand at the time was about investing in yourself and investing in education to understand how to be a business owner. And so, I looked up one year and I'm oh my God, we did over 200 events, weddings, specifically weddings one year. And I thought I was going to die. My hair was falling out. I gained 60 pounds. I broke my foot that year. It was a very depressing year because I couldn't do what I normally would do. I wasn't in the gym. It was just, and I still had to perform because I owned a business. I was the owner. I had a few team members, but they were very much behind the scenes. I didn't make it known to people. They really thought I was a one-woman show, which I was for 7 years. My sister would help me on the side. My mom would help me on the side. My friends would help me on the side. And then I, kind of lost them all, unfortunately, because they ended up being stay-at-home moms and I had nothing in common with them anymore. And so what was the question? Sorry.
just the peaks and valleys.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even again, it wasn't even about the money. Then my dad's honey, money, he, even though he wasn't very entrepreneurial, he was still a really smart dad. And then, his brother, my uncle, owning a venue and things like that, which their target market is just so different. And, people just think oh, you work with all these celebrities and it's such a glorified life. But really behind the scenes, it was me working 24/7. There days would go by where I didn't sleep. I didn't shower. I would, sit at my computer working constantly, living off of Coca-Cola. I'm drinking Coke, not cocaine. People are do you do Coke? Fuck no. My dad was no. That's one thing you can, I don't know. But drinking a lot of Coke and a lot of caffeine, and it was just so unhealthy. Yeah. And thank God, a couple of my friends in the industry, actually one of the guys who owns a lighting company for events, he's Ange, you work way too hard. You're not taking care of yourself. I was depressed. And again, it wasn't about money. It was and it wasn't even people labor. It would take me longer to teach someone rather than me just getting it done. So the next year, that's when I joined Catalyst through the Entrepreneur Organization and really started to learn what a business was and how to hire people and how to really freaking understand numbers and profitability and overhead and ROI and CTA. I didn't know what any of that stuff meant. I'm what? I know all the ICD-9 codes in the medical industry for acronyms, but come again? So it was I was just, again, getting another degree, but it's the best money and time ever spent because it taught me like how to think smarter, not harder, stop saying yes to everything, like have a strategy, set goals. And I had a coach once, he's like, okay, I don't understand you. He's like, you're really confusing. He's like, you teach gymnastics, you have this wedding company, you're launching a pet product company. Like, why? Like, what are you doing? And he's like, I need you to track your time. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, I need you to track your time. Like on your calendar, I know you're paperless. I need you to color code things. And I need to see how you're spending your time with your clients. And I'm like, oh, I can't do, I mean, every objection in the book. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like these brides, like they need, and it was more about me being fulfilled as a person helping others than me actually standing up and saying, no, I'm not going to do it like that. And my clients were running me. My business was running me. Thank God I worked in a mental hospital because I probably would have checked into one. It was kind of, my dad's like, you're not even 30 and you're having a midlife crisis. I'm like, no, it's just these people are so demanding. And so this coach, Andy, he's like, which now we still do his events, like we're great friends, but he's like, I've seen you just really take what I said and what other coaches have said and like you like take it to the extreme. And so it's like I built processes, I built procedures, I said no more than I said yes. I ask a lot of questions. I learned to pre-qualify. I learned to hire the right people. I learned to actually like put the things in place that I went to school for, which was psychology. And my whole life changed. And then when I hired like an actual accountant, and he's like, okay, let's look at the last year. You did 200 plus events. He's like, so do you want the good news or bad news? I'm like, what's the bad news? He's like, you did 30 something weddings, not only for free, but you paid the people to do it because you didn't keep up with your overhead. You didn't charge appropriately. And of course, it's like half the clients that I like didn't mesh well. And I'm just like, I'm not a crier. And I'm like crying, like, stabbing my stomach and my heart. And I'm like, why? Exactly to your question. Why in the hell am I doing this? Why? Mm-hmm. Like, what am I doing? But I knew it made people happy and I knew I had fun. People are like, yeah, you had fun spending other people's money. And I'm like, it's not about that though. It's about educating people and letting them know like, this is stupid money and this is smart money, and being very blunt and very honest, because that's what I grew up with. Or being private / confidential, where you just don't answer the question and you divert. And I've learned to do that very well when I don't want to answer. But I mean, there's so many things, but I feel like entrepreneurship and then social media was born, and that's a whole nother tool. But understanding your why and why you do it really still didn't resonate with me until, I don't know, maybe 6 or so years ago. My dad got sick. He got cancer. And he retired from CSX, but then worked at Gaylord. And our town flooded in 2010, which another business, productivity and going paperless, another consulting business was born for me because my vendors lost everything. But my dad worked at Gaylord and he rebuilt Gaylord. We had the first wedding when it reopened in 2011, and 3 men in his department got the same throat cancer. And so, he fought for 5 years, but then continuously declined, went to work, loved his retirement job, so dedicated. And finally it's just like, it was time, like, it's just not my dad. And he's like, honey, you're so young and everybody says like money and time is money. And he's like, my time's precious. Like, you can always work and make more, like, just spend time with me and the family. So that's a big deal. Like whenever, and that's where I really relied on my team more. And I removed myself as the owner, a lot. And honestly, it's like the best thing that I ever did. Because when you remove yourself, your team actually is able to perform. And, all the girls, a lot of them are girls. They're like, Ange, we learned from the best. Like, we're good. Like, we're okay. Like, go be with your dad. And then my sister got sick and she's got 4 kids. And so, then time shift, dad went to heaven, and then now like time shifts to helping raise 4 kids. And it's like, I'm not a mom. I didn't want kids. I didn't sign up for this. But that's why God has us in these places where now I've provided entrepreneurial, I can't even say the word right, avenues for my 4 nieces and nephews. And so, oh yeah, I need the cord. But like, that's one of the reasons I get up every morning, is to help people to be honest and to educate them on the stuff that I'm really educated on. I know my shit in very specific areas. Don't ask me about geography and politics. Mm-hmm. My dad would be like, where are you going? I'm like, I think the island's like below Florida. And he's like, no, honey, like just don't open your mouth about geography. They got me a big map one year for Christmas. Cause I go all over, but that's not important to me at all. What's important to me is I get on a plane, I go, I land, my client's there, or I'm there before them, and I'm making sure everything is perfect, because not only is it their money, but it's an experience. And that's where we create an experience based on psychology. And then keeping everything in the cloud and making sure that our clients are really connected to these experiences and these emotional events. That's what is so different. And so every day I'm reminded by watching my sister fight and like helping her kids, and like it's cookie time in Tennessee with Girl Scouts right now. So it's like they're 9 and 10, the little ones, and they're like super competitive. They're like, okay, Anna, like what's our goal? Like 600? Are we going to sell 600 boxes? And I'm like, you guys have been around me too much. You're 9 and 10 years old. Like, we don't have to be competitive. Like, just sell cookies. Like, just have fun. But they constantly see that, not competitive edge, but just like helping others. And, at a very young age, I'm able to make a difference. And like, it really, as cheesy as it sounds, like it really does make a difference. And that's why even like my next endeavor, what I'll be focusing on next year, it does come with passion, and it does come with paving the way for others, because you know what? Without the coaches that I had, which were all men, I wouldn't be where I am today at all. Like I really, God like put the right people in place for me at the right time, but I also had to be receptive to it and stop being so stubborn, because I was really stubborn. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. And they're like, Andy's like, well, then I'm going to fire you if you don't do this. I'm like, what? I've never been fired before. So it's just constantly learning every single day, constantly learning, educating yourself, surrounding yourself with the right people. And I mean, there's still days where I'm like, God, I'm so tired. Like today, like I don't have makeup on. I haven't even taken a shower today. To you about, but it's like I'm doing other things.
I'm not even wearing pants. I'm joking.
I have on a little black dress. I've got on, a dress, so I do have on pants. But it's just, again, when you're happy doing what you're doing, and you really find your niche and you find your way, the money does come. And a lot of people are like always asking me like, money. I'm like, if you're in this industry for money, yes, you can make a good living if you do it right and you have the right people around you. But if you're in this because all you think I walk in shit dollars, like literally people think that, you should get out of the car like right now. Like I've told interns that before, because you have to be passionate. I can't teach you how to be passionate about people. I can't. So either you're passionate about people and hospitality and taking care of people, or it's never going to work. And you have to learn to be honest with yourself and get honest with yourself real quick. And that's one of the hard struggles I still have to this day, is like, okay, maybe that's not a good use of my time. So like, let's say no, thank you. And so now like I've hired someone to like say no for me, because like I don't like to say no. I like to say yes. I'm a yes girl. That's how I've gotten where I am. It really is. It's saying yes.
And you, in the beginning, that's exactly what I did. I had to say yes to everything. My back was up against a wall. I had to, we either sank or swam, and we talked about before with the Disney trip. We talked about Grant Cardone in the other podcast, on your podcast. And one of the things that he always harps on is commit, the word commit. And my wife asked me that day that I came home and I lost my job. And she says, well, what about Disney? I looked her square in the eye. We are going, come hell or high water. Okay, it's going to happen. How is it going to happen? I don't know. I'm going to do my thing and apply everything I've learned over the past several years, and we're going to figure it out. I said, but I'm done. It's time to take control. There were troughs, there were, peaks and valleys for me. And again, like I talked about before, it's how you figure out how to weather those storms and marinate your mind in good stuff to get you out of those valleys. In your situation, you've obviously gotten a lot of excuse me, battle scars from tremendous success, but getting the coaching involved, and of course, humbling yourself enough to get the coaching. You yourself have now brought that on as a service that you offer, coaching and consulting, with the backup. You have not only the audacity to do it, but you've got the horsepower to be a coach, which in this day and age is kind of rare. Mm-hmm.
It is.
So,
and a lot of our coaching, a lot of our coaching and the consulting we do, again, like this was all word of mouth. It's no big secret that Nashville's growth has just absolutely exploded. And so a lot of people,
market in general.
that and the venue market, and people, like, we have more cranes in Nashville, I think, than like any city. Apparently, at least somebody told me that. And so people opening venues started asking me. It's funny because they're like, can you come take a look at this? And like, would you use this for your clients? Little did they know that I was figuring out an exit strategy to get the F out of doing so many damn events. And, in learning how to hone in on a very, very specific market, because I'm not only tired, but the reality of what things cost these days, and then Pinterest and the disconnect, I just don't have the patience anymore. So there's a very specific market that we'll work with because we're on to other things. And so I would go to these venues and I'm like, I would maybe use it, but like, did you think about this and load in and storage and like, okay, you're not going to have a kitchen. That's cool. But like if somebody's going to have a plate up dinner, like you need, and so from the back end things. And then I had people that are like, can I just hire you to like meet with my architect? And so then that turned into like a ton of venue coaching and a ton of consulting. And then that turned into, well, can you draw my design? And how do I make everything mobile? And, so again, just by me helping people. And then people are just like my podcast. They're like, so how much are your sponsorship spots? And I'm like, what? Huh? Like, I was just doing it to help people.
You become like a planet with a gravitational pull, man. You just pull people to. That's great. But
I mean, it's like, I don't plan this stuff.
Yeah. But your branding is just spot on. I'm looking at the website, the pictures and everything. You've got a personal brand that's to be contended with, and on the page of your services, planning and design, coaching and consulting, and then we get into speaker and influencer, which are the three kind of areas. I guess you're kind of getting to that point where you want to become that in-demand speaker, I guess, and similar to what for me in voiceover, it is about helping people. I'll always take a phone call to help an aspiring voiceover talent figure out their business or their marketing or go over their demo or even do coaching in that sense. It doesn't matter to me. But again, it's that similar quality. When you're going out there and you really genuinely want to help people, it'll just happen for you. And I know a lot of people that go after the money and they struggle constantly, and a lot of the people who do get the money because they wanted the money, it's not as fulfilling. There's no joy there. There's no purpose. There's no why, like you were talking about. Speaking and such like that, how has that taken off for you? What kind of events have you done?
Yeah, it's interesting. In fact, people think that, I speak to wedding professionals, brides, which I do, and go to bridal shows. But I actually speak more as an influencer from a small business, a woman in business. I get, before, again, with social media being a tool and all these great things that are cool now, I didn't know what I was building. I didn't know that the coach that I had at the time had a way bigger vision. And I'm so thankful to this day. It's like the best thing that I invested in because it was me and they were setting me up for content creation and future. And I'm very thankful to learn that the consistency and a consistent message matters. But I remember I got asked to speak at a more entrepreneurial type conference, but I didn't have a book. And in order to be a speaker, you had to be a published author. And I'm like, I don't need I'm not a reader. My mom read to us and we were library kids, but I'm an Audible fan. I listen to books probably one a week. I mean, I'm a nerd like that, but because I have ADD, I'm all over the place. I don't retain and read. I was never a reader. I've never read a full book in my life, to be honest, from front to back. And it's one of those things I'm not good at. And so really, Audible changed my life. I know I'm like going off on another tangent. I'm like, what was the point to my story now? Like, what was I even talking about? Yeah. So I'm like, why do I need a book? And, but that was a challenge for me. I've never really been turned away because I'm like, but I have a really great message and, I really know how to keep the audience alive. And so what did I do? I went back to Kevin, the guy I was working with. I'm like, they told me I'd have a book because he was the one, he's like, there's this agency called William Morrison. Like there's all, so he got me in front of, and to me, it wasn't even about, another money-making avenue of my revenue. It was more about me getting in front of people to show them, hey, you don't have to work 9 to 5 and you don't, as a woman and with blonde hair. And yes, I get labeled a dumb blonde all the time and I like laugh it off and that does not hurt my feelings. I'm like, yep, politics, geography, religion, I'm your dumb blonde girl. But ask me about event, profitability, technology, paperless, I'll blow you out of the water any day. If you want to get competitive here. But it's just, so I did. I'm like, okay, we need to do a book. And he's like, Ange, you have a video tip series. You have a podcast. We're going to give those episodes to an editor. And in 3 weeks, you're going to have a book. I'm like, okay. So that's what we did. And I self-published my first book. And that was 10, 11 books ago. And so every year we take a lot of my content, because I do a lot of videos, a lot of podcasts. To me, that's the easiest way that I connect with people. I don't connect with people through reading, through text message, through email. In fact, a lot of people misread what I'm like, no, that's not what I meant. So we've actually done a study with a free app called Marco Polo. It's a video texting app with companies where... Yeah, so a friend of mine who owns 30-something Sprint stores in Middle Tennessee made his managers use Marco Polo instead of texting in Salesforce for a quarter, and they went up $3+ million in a quarter for all of their sales because people were communicating differently and they could see the face. And now he's working with the developers of Marco Polo because to the consumer, it's just a fun, free little video texting app. And I'm like, oh, no. Like there are two apps. Totally. I'm like, there's 2 apps I cannot live without because it really helps me understand people and they understand me. And even with social media and all the influence and the speaking and all that, that's great. But if your message is misconstrued, like that's really bad for your brand. And honestly, when I first started speaking, I just did it for fun. Like I gave people my book, like I didn't charge. And then my business manager's like, okay, so this month you spent 32 hours on building your presentations because everything I do is completely custom for the audience. I don't always wash, rinse, repeat the same one. Like, yes, the material is very much the same on Psychology Technology, but I customize it, colors, branding, everything. And it takes a little bit of time. Plus, when I'm traveling and speaking, I have kids, not my kids, my sister's kids, but kids to worry about, school, pickup, dogs, my mother that I'm a mother to. There's all these things that have to shift, and then I'm out of town, so the 2 girls in the office have to pick up and do a lot more. And so when people are like, how much does it cost for you to come here for 60 minutes? I'm like, let me educate you. This is how I pay my people and my bills. And you have to make X amount of dollars a day to run your business, be profitable, pay your overhead. And then, sometimes it's an inconvenience. Like there's not a direct flight to some of these. I'm that Southwest brat. I'm like, there's not a direct flight. I'm like, can we just do this over video? But the older you get and when people in your life who are super important, and their time is limited, you start to assess. And unfortunately, it's death that I'm like, oh my God, you're not going to be here every day. And like, I can't always go out and make more money. And so I'm very aware of people's time and how much time it takes to do these things. And I don't think people really understand that from a speaking perspective. It's like, yes, I want to go speak. I mean, I get my energy from that. I love being on stage in front of thousands of people. I love when they come up to me and ask me question after question. And how did you do that? And I'm like, I'm just going to have a class. So all of you can come to my class. And if you can't come in person, that's okay. We're going to live stream it. And then Dave Ramsey started. And I'm like, Dave, how are you live streaming? I'm like, I want to do that. Mm-hmm. So then what we've done is you make the business work for you. So now it's like, I don't want to travel as much. And so we can bring people to, now everybody wants to come to Nashville. So, we'll do hotel room blocks. We'll get people similar to what Green's doing, like with his live events. Jim, why haven't you done a live event? Actually, we need to talk about that.
I've actually thought about doing one.
Okay. So I'm your girl and I can help you. And I have the perfect event space with free parking and just amazing light. And it's not in a hotel ballroom.
Nashville needs a con. We need some sort of business convention.
Grant needs to come here and see. That's right. The kind of speaking. It's like, so in Nashville, it's like, oh, that's that little wedding girl. It's like, well, yeah, but there's so much more than that. Yeah. And outside of Nashville, it's more about technology. I speak at a lot of tech conferences and talk about how to save money in your business, about automating things and using apps. And when people, I love it when people are like, but what I do is so custom. I'm like, okay, it's okay. I don't expect you all to Google my name, but like, I've done all these. You can't get any more custom than the luxury weddings and the people that I've worked with. And I thought the same thing too. And yes, there is a custom, and that's the reason people hire you for your product or your service or whatever you're selling. But there are some things you can automate and save a ton of time and be way more productive. Yes. So it's like, how to be productive and like the money will come kind of thing. But it does take work and strategy and education. You cannot do the same thing over and over and expect a different result. You have to do different things and try them out. So that's one thing I'm always like, every first of the month, I Google like, what are the good apps this month? Like, I'm that nerd. And every month I'm like, oh my God, there's this new app. But Marco Polo and Vlog Easy, which from an editing standpoint for video, it does auto editing for you. It's free right now. They're working on a subscription base. I think it's going to be like $10 a month. The developer, right. I'm like, dude, I'd pay $100 a month because it saves me so much time. Yeah. And it does vertical and horizontal. And so like when people are like, what's your favorite app this month? I'm like, well, consistently for like the past year almost, it's been those two, because they're so valuable in time. And when you can see a person's face and understand what they're saying via Marco Polo on your time, we got to be friends.
Absolutely.
Then it saves so much time and heartache and confusion and text messages and emails and
saves phone calls.
I hate that. Yes. Oh my God. I hate I'm a schedule queen. If it's not on my calendar, it ain't happening, including phone calls. Like we schedule everything. Otherwise it's not productive.
Yeah. Do you do Q&A at your live events when you do speaking?
We do. Yeah. Awesome. I go off on tangents.
Yeah.
I'm really bad at it. So, I have a girl in the back and she's like, stop. And, a lot of times, but yes, I love the Q&A. A lot of times we're out of time and I have somebody behind me, that I have to get out. And so I'll go out into the hallway and, a lot of people, their heads spinning. Like I actually had to have a coach me on speaking and not giving away so much information and staying on task and finishing a sentence. And he's like, you're extremely entertaining. However, like you got to finish your sentences and you have to finish your point. And he's like, did Tony Robbins coach you on looping? Like, is this a strategy you're trying to use? Because you're not doing it right. And I'm like, no, I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, well, there's this strategy that Tony does. And he's like, and you're like pre-doing it. And I'm like, no, I'm not meaning to do that at all, actually. So if you're going to go out there and speak and actually charge for it, training and practicing, it takes time and effort to
And here's
really
the
do a good
mark.
job.
Here's the mark of a true battle-scarred business person. Okay, and this is something that was gone over in episode 39 with Steve Sims, the ugly Sims, who I had on. He made a great point. He says he does a lot of speaking as well. If we ever do a NashCon, he'd be a good speaker. But he said the guys who I would talk to that were speaking before me, I would ask them, well, what do you know about your topic that you're talking about? Well, I've read a lot of books. Okay, what have you done with it? Well, I haven't done anything. I read a lot of books. And he says the mark of a true battle-scarred speaker is the one who will take questions, because they're the ones who are going to be grilled by the audience and be able to survive it, you know? So kudos to you. And that's why I asked that question, because you can stand on your own with your answers, I'm pretty sure. And it gets back to the coaching industry now. I know a guy comes to mind who coached on culture building in business. And I'm looking at his business, I'm going, you can't hold a team together. What do you mean culture building? You know what I mean? That drives me nuts. When people speak about it, I told people, I put out a mini video from that particular episode. You will never catch me speaking about stuff that I know nothing about. I'm not going to pretend. I'm not that good of an actor. I'm not going to fake it till I make it. If I don't know anything, I'm able to talk about marketing. I'm able to talk about copywriting for businesses. I'm able to talk about, my experience and how I sold cars and how I apply it to what I do now. But I don't pretend to be the authority on it. I know what I know. And that's the best I can do. And on those topics, I can take questions all day long in my speaking presentations that I do. Because a lot of what you're talking about is creatives. Creatives are locked into that mindset of, no, what I do is a snowflake. It's very custom. Okay, I get it. But yeah, in order to scale this thing, you either got to be charging more per project or you got to figure out how to do it in bulk.
And that's the key word, scale.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what I was doing for a long time, again, I didn't know what I didn't know. I was building a beast that required me, and that's not good.
Yeah.
And, my coach was like, well, look at Martha Stewart. And I was like, Martha Stewart has thousands of employees and all these different lines. And he's like, well, she's under her name. I never was like, oh, my business is going to be my name. I've changed my business name 4 times on paper. But it was always call Angela, call Angela, call Angela, call Angela. Angela will help you. Angela will take care of it. But I had to potty train. I call it potty train your brain. And I've had to potty train future clients on, okay, you're going to talk to me 4 times for this, and this is what I do. And then I have a team, and this is what they're going to do, and this is what they're going to do. And I set the stage to let them know, you're not going to be able to call me. Don't text me. Don't do that, because I don't do that. When I'm with you, I'm 100% focused on you. And you're going to get this experience. So I think that communicating your value and communicating what has worked for you, and when people try to get you to veer away from it, that's when it's this isn't a good client. And you know what? You're not for everybody, and that's okay. But at the heart of everything with a business is you got to know your overhead. You've got to hire the right people, and you got to make money. Otherwise, you might as well just go get a job and do the same thing every day. Seriously.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I applaud you for it. I mean, you've always been quite influential on me from afar. From the first day I met you, from the second time we met you, and now here. And I appreciate you being on the program, if you will. Where can people find you?
Yeah, check out my website, Angela Proffitt, 2 F's and 2 T's. It's funny. People are like, is that a stage name? Profit? I'm like, no, that's my real last name. And it's not even spelled right, but it's 2 F's and 2 T's. And we have a ton of resources out there that you can get to all the social media stuff from our website. Have a lot of free videos on YouTube. Our podcast is called Weddings Unveiled, where it teaches creatives and people that started out in the wedding market. So I would say our podcast, our videos are what people gravitate to, just because I'm a talker. But obviously we have a lot of great books out there and a lot of great resources all on my website.
Right on, right on. Well, thank you so much for being on. The JMVO Weekly Primer, of course, is brought to you by big.lighting.com. Check us out online where we've got all sorts of different services. Now we're branching into the electrical division, big.electrical.com as well. And of course, all of Angela's information will be down below in the description box, where you can find her Instagram handle, the Twitter handle, all the things that are pertinent to follow Angela. And I certainly suggest that you do and find out more about her, because it's she's a force to be reckoned with, internationally for sure. The JMVO Weekly Primer, of course, you can follow us. We've got the Facebook page. Go to jimmccarthyvoiceovers.com/podcast to pick your poison and subscribe and do all that fun stuff. Again, Angela, I thank you for being on. Thank you so much taking the time out today, because I know you're busy.
Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome. And I really think that we should talk about this event, Jim.
Absolutely. I agree.
This is the JMVO Weekly Primer. Please subscribe, rate, and comment via JimMcCarthyVoiceovers.com /podcast.